within the first few months, we were getting literally hundreds of thousands of visitors per month.
Jaden Easton, you had massive success and came onto the scene really fast, built an 8-figure business, in my mind, in record time.
So I had this vision to basically teach people how to jailbreak their iPhones. It ended up leading to me creating a website called iJailbreak.com.
What is the dark side of an 8-figure business that no one wants to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, especially when you haven't done it before, is
On this show, you'll meet people who have gone from 6 figures in a year to 6 figures in a month, in a day, in an hour, and even a minute. You'll hear their story, the strategies that worked, the insights that changed everything, and the lessons they learned along the way.
This is the Six Fig Podcast.
Jaden Easton, welcome to the Six Fig Podcast. So grateful to have you here, my man.
Thanks, man. Yeah, when I got the text, the call from you, I was excited and honored to be on your show, man.
Yeah, you have such a profound story. I'm so excited to unpack it here today. It's really easy to look at the success that you've had, especially at a young age, and just think that you have the Midas touch, and in a lot of ways you do. And so I'm excited to unpack the brilliance, the strategy, the how you think on this podcast as well. But I also know there's a much deeper story here. Yeah. It's not like you just have an idea and all of a sudden, magic happens, right? Like you put in the work, you put in the time, you put in the energy, you put in the effort. And so I'm really excited to unpack your story and really, put your story out there in the world to motivate and inspire other people who have that calling on their heart to pursue what they want to do in this world. And I know you're a perfect example of that. So, so grateful to have you here, and
grateful to have the opportunity. I think you nailed it. I mean, I think we live in a day and age, especially with social media, where it's social media is often like the highlight reel, right? And it's like, it's so cool to see other people winning. But I think on the flip side of that, sometimes if you think that that's all there is to it, and that's all there is, it can sometimes be a little disempowering until you unravel the surface. And I think it's conversations like these that you're creating and opening up that are just going to be so impactful to people that are getting started, and also are already in momentum that maybe hit a block. And
totally, man. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you and I, we just met recently within the last couple of years, but I saw you come onto the scene, and you and your business partners, Chris and Landon, the three of you had massive success and came onto the scene really fast, built an 8-figure business in my mind in record time, and really had massive success. And that was back when I was Brendan Burchard's CMO. And so I was like really dialed into the author, speaker, coach space. Yep. And I was like, who are these guys like coming out of nowhere in my perspective, right? But even then there's a longer story to be told of how you even got to that point, to starting something and within just a few short years building an 8-figure business. And so, let's start there. Let's start like how did you even hear about this thing called entrepreneurship? When did you get started in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I stumbled upon entrepreneurship relatively young. I think I really got the bug. It was like in grade 7. Okay, in grade 7, our teacher took us into the computer lab, and he hosted like a little workshop on building websites. And at that time, obviously I knew of the internet, but it didn't click to me that almost anybody with an idea and a computer could put something up on the internet and be seen by anyone around the world. And for whatever reason, even as like 11, 12 years old, that just kind of like clicked and like inspired me, because I saw that as like a really powerful way to be able to take my future into my own hands a little bit, because for me, I come from an awesome family, but just a regular middle class family that works like a job, works in the trades, and I think that's awesome. But for me, I always like wanted more. I wanted to take my destiny into my own hands a little bit more. So like it just kind of like clicked. I was like, I wonder if this is a way that I can like. It excited me. So
I mean, even there though, you're 10, 11, 12 years old in this computer classroom. You have this desire to want more. Like, do you have any inkling of like where that even came from or started? I mean, obviously there's that moment of learning this, learning about computers and seeing the internet and like and having that moment. Like, is it something that you felt was kind of like a divine moment, like a turning point, so to speak, for that you can't really explain, or did you have something that might have even happened earlier that really opened your awareness to like desiring more for yourself?
So here's the thing. This podcast is new, but I've actually spent the last 15 years behind the scenes building some of your favorite thought leaders and personal brands. If you actually want people to remember you and what you do, check out personalbrand.com. Links in the description. All right, let's keep rolling.
Yeah, I think a little bit of what you said, Divine, but I also think I was just following like my curiosity. Like, as a kid, I was always a very curious person. Like, I would always ask like my parents, my grandparents, like, how does this work? Like, why, what? Like, I had this insatiable desire to like grow, to learn as much as I could about things. And I think like the internet was just there's so many things that you can learn from like the actual, like what goes into building websites, then like marketing websites, that my brain was just like, okay, I want to like, I just felt called. I felt called to it. It was like a gut feeling.
Yeah.
We'll come back to like the gut and intuition. But I feel like almost every time that I've listened to my gut, you know, it's panned out. And it might not have panned out in that very like decision, but like that's led me to something else. That's then led me to something else. You know, that's made it the right decision.
Totally, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, over the last decade, I've literally had thousands and thousands of one-on-one conversations with entrepreneurs. And one of the common threads through that of successful entrepreneurs, people who have success in their life, is that curiosity and not trying to overthink everything and have everything perfect or figure, you know, but like really exploring ideas, exploring concepts, having that open mind, asking questions, seeing something for what it is, and like asking why. And you know, especially as parents, like when your kid's constantly asking you why, you just like default to because, you know, as the answer. Right. But like it actually is a superpower, and it's a sign of someone exploring this thing called life. And so that's a really you know, although it can be dismissed as something you know, kind of irrelevant to business, like curiosity is actually a really powerful skill set to have success in business, especially as things are evolving and rapidly changing with AI. The people that are on the forefront of AI, they're curious, they're exploring, they're in the process of learning, figuring out how all these things work. So
I think curiosity is a really powerful tool. I mean, we can talk about this more later, but it was a really powerful tool even with building businesses, because I think when you're building businesses, you're obviously, as an entrepreneur, confronted with challenges all the time, and it's like the way you reframe that challenge. Is it a challenge? Is it frustrating? Is it hard? Or, you know, is this an opportunity to get curious on why this is happening?
Right.
And, you know, if you can try to tap into that childlike curiosity, that's why I try to remind myself anyways when I'm up against the wall. It's like, you know, this is just an opportunity to get really curious. And if you treat it that way, you know, you can actually then start to look at it from a different perspective and start making progress towards getting over it.
Awesome. Yeah. So true. And I mean, that curiosity in that classroom, I know that I want to unpack this a little bit too, but you started being curious and started tinkering and building, and ultimately at a very young age, you built a website that got hundreds of thousands of hits. And so tell me that little story of you know, going from having that calling of seeing this opportunity on the internet to tinkering to building something that was I would say would be your first business success.
Yeah. So that very day after school, I like asked my parents to go to the bookstore, started learning everything I could about like web design. I started to build a few websites for just like close friends and family members, restaurants, whatever. And then I was like, you know, I really want to build kind of like a website for myself, just for fun, and something that I was really into at the time. You know, when the iPhones were first released, they didn't have like the App Store wasn't what it was today. The phones weren't what it was today. So there's this thing called jailbreaking, where you could kind of install like third-party software that other developers would make, and you could theme your phone funny or your iPod, whatever it was. And the thing about it was, I noticed it was like very, very technical. And at the time in like high school, I would have people come up to me all the time because they knew I was a little bit more technical minded, and like, hey, could you jailbreak this for me? I don't know how. And I was like, it's really not that hard if you just break it down into steps. So I had this vision to basically teach people how to jailbreak their iPhones. And at first I literally did it mostly just for like close friends and family, because I was being asked so much. And long story short, ended up leading to me creating a website called ijailbreak.com. And we taught people how to jailbreak their phones, and we were reporting on the new apps that were released in this different ecosystem. And it was really, really popular at the time. I remember within the first few months of launching that website, we were getting literally hundreds of thousands of visitors per month. And again, that was one of those moments where I really at the time I was just like, I saw a little bit of a gap. I saw that people, didn't understand how to do this thing. I was like, I'm going to do my best to break it down as simple as possible. That was kind of like the competitive advantage. And people really resonated with it and shared it, and it blew up. And that was my first taste of the entrepreneurial roller coaster of that things can move really quickly.
That's amazing. Yeah. So, I mean, hearing that background, it wasn't necessarily as strategic and as planned as it might seem. I mean, jailbreak.com, great name, and ultimately, your plan from day one to figure out this Jailbreak thing wasn't to build a website for 100,000 monthly viewers or hundreds of thousands of monthly viewers, right? Like, is that accurate to say?
Yeah, at the time I knew that you could make money online, and like I was like, I'll put up this website, maybe make like a few extra dollars, but it was really just because I was just having fun.
Right.
So, yeah, I was just having fun.
You remind me so much of my business partner Jeremy Abraham, and so much of business success is tinkering and playing and doing something that you just think is cool and that you think other people think is cool, and then sharing that with your friends and like getting that initial feedback. And in business, the fastest way to grow, and the reason why you grew so fast, is that you just jumped into a stream that was already moving. You provided something that people were already seeking to do on their own, and to do something cool and kind of help people be on the cutting edge, so they could kind of have status with their friends of having the apps that their other friends couldn't have, right? And so like it's so profound and so deeply strategic. But at the end of the day, it was just you leaning into your passion and doing something that you thought was cool, that your friends thought were cool, and it just grew from there, right?
100%. And like, don't get me wrong, like it was a lot of work. Like I would come home after high school, and like I would work on that literally from like after school until I went to bed. But like it didn't really feel like work, because I was really in it, believed in what I was doing, and like I said, the biggest thing was I was just following my curiosity and having fun.
That's so awesome. So, I definitely want to get to clients and community. That's what you're most known for. What transpired between Jailbreak and clients and community? I know mentorship played a big role in that. Personal development. We share a deep passion, interest in personal development. We were both the youngest people in the room. For me, my entrepreneurship journey started at 17, and that was when I went to my first personal development events, and I was always the youngest person in the room. And so like both of us have this, deep desire to want to get better. So tell me a little bit more about that time period from Jailbreak to clients and community, and how mentorship and personal development and investing in yourself really set the foundation for everything else.
Yeah, I was the same way. Like the first personal development book a family friend gave me was Think and Grow Rich. And even that concept of like, hey, you're telling me I can better myself, I can grow into more, that was really a revelation at the time. But jailbreaking had a window. Eventually, Apple made the phones what they are today, so it kind of died down in popularity. I knew that wasn't going to be, my 20, 30-year play was awesome as in high school, and I made some money with that, and it was enough to give me the confidence to be like, after high school, like I decided not to go the traditional route of college, university. I was like, I'm just going to go all in and learn as much as I can about sales, marketing, the internet, and everything like that. So shortly after graduating, I ended up basically getting into affiliate marketing, where you're doing the marketing for other digital products and services. And I became a top affiliate for an entrepreneur that was also based out of Arizona. His name was Mark Hoverson. And he was a really successful entrepreneur in the digital marketing scene. He kind of came upside around like Russell Brunson and all those guys, was some of the first, use like Infusionsoft back in the day, do really, at the time, like groundbreaking marketing campaigns, direct response marketing, and everything like that. And I really looked up to the guy, not so much for even the success he had in business, even though he was a very successful entrepreneur, but because I also saw that he had a lot of success outside business. Like he had incredible relationship with his wife, he had a loving family, he was always surrounded by a lot of friends. So not to make a story too long, but basically became a top affiliate. Mark invited me out to one of his events. This is like in 2014 to actually meet him in person for the first time. He offered to let me stay at one of his guest bedrooms, and with his family. And over that 2-week period of time, had learned so much just being around Mark, in his energy, how he operates as a leader in and outside of business, his business mind, that it was like a couple of days before my flight back home, I was like, Mark, I've gotten so much value learning from you. Like, what if I stay a little bit longer and I'm willing to, really do whatever to stay inside your world? Like, I'll fill whatever gaps you need inside your business. And long story short, that ended up being one of the best decisions I think I've ever made in my life, just because it went on to me essentially becoming like an apprentice with Mark, and then really becoming his like right hand in a lot of ways. And it was through Mark that I really learned, like through the Jailbreaking website and through affiliate marketing, I learned a side of business, like really like more like the marketing side, maybe a little bit the sales side, but I didn't really have like the operations side, like the leadership side. There's so many different components that go into running a business, as you know. And I was really fortunate to get an opportunity to learn that, learn that through Mark. Yeah. And I know we're getting to clients and community. So it was.
And I mean, something there to loop back on is one of the first things you said as we started talking about that I don't want to discount too, is that ijailbreak.com gave you the confidence to pursue more down that path of online marketing and seeking mentorship and going to these events. And so many people wait to be confident before they take action. But it's actually through the process of taking action, the confidence is made that inspires you to take more action. And so, that was, a profound piece of your story there too, of just like, hey, like I took action and it worked. And yes, there was learning lessons and failures and things along the way there. But you get that confidence, like, oh, like, I did that and I just thought that was cool and that was bigger than I thought it could ever be. Like, what can I actually do when I actually try to do something, type of a thing, right? I could imagine that was part of the thought process. And for you it was Mark Hoverson, and for me it was Brendan Burchard. Nice. But mentorship is such a critical component to figuring these things out. The best investment you can make is an investment in yourself. Either that's time under mentorship, or paying to get in the room, or paying for consulting to shortcut your learning. And I did it just by happenstance of enjoying being in the room of personal development and business conferences, and I think the same. But for me, one of the biggest mistakes I made in my life was not investing heavier into more mentorship and more consulting faster, and really not understanding how you can literally, in a very short period of time, like you just described, Mark Hoverson's decades of experience. In 2 weeks, you got the potency of decades of experience, and you got a shortcut. Instead of you having to put in decades, you got to learn best practices, saw how he operates in a very short period of time. And that's the power of mentorship, and that's something that I'm leaning more into in this next season of my life. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, like you said, I think it really does. It compresses time, and it allows you, in life, you can choose to learn from making your own mistakes, or you can learn through the mistakes of others. And I think ultimately it's a combination of the two, obviously. But I think any time that you can learn from the mistakes of other people, that gives you an advantage. Mm-hmm. And with the mentorship through Mark, like I said, I just learned so much about from like my communication to my mindset to real business skills. I was able to just really level up. And one of the big lessons that Mark taught me with communication was this principle of like executive communication, which of course the importance of communication. We have a mutual friend, Michael Burnoff, that we've also dove deep in the subject of communication. But like it's just simple things like as a young 20 something, like one of the first things Mark made me realize is my communication was very scattered. And I think a lot of people's communication, it's like to get to the end resolution, it's like an email chain of like 10 emails or 10 text messages. And one of the big lessons that Mark taught me was like, an executive is very precise. They do one shot of communication where they're anticipating the questions on the other end, and they're answering those questions in one foul swoop. So I remember he gave me one simple task, which was to like update the website, and I showed him an email chain of like 10 different emails of what had to go into getting the website, because it was like, well, do you have permission from Mark to do this? Like, what needs to be edited here? And Mark was like, this would have been one email from me where it's like, hey, developer, just so you know, I just had a conversation with Mark. He asked me to update the website. So here's exactly what needs to be done. 1, 2, 3. It needs to be done by this date because. That sounds really simple, but the concept of communication, especially as like you grow a business, if your entire team isn't efficient with their communication, that's when things start to become like very
it's friction.
It's friction. It's very chaotic.
Yeah, it's something where if your team's not effectively communicating, things fall through the cracks, things are misinterpreted, people spend time doing things that they didn't actually need to do because they didn't read the email correctly, or the email was written, and those things, especially when you're a solopreneur, you don't have enough feedback loops to recognize the value of that. But yeah, as you start hiring team, those types of things start to become quite evident and quite painful. So that's a valuable lesson. What are a couple other big things that you learned from Mark? And I mean, I know this might be also a little bit more of a vulnerable conversation too, but I know that, in 2018, Mark passed away as well, and so kind of want to dig into how that impacted you. Someone that you looked up to, someone that played such a big role in your life, and is no longer here. And so let's dig into some of those wisdom nuggets that Mark implemented, or that Mark exemplified, and that you still live out to. The values, the principles, the strategies, the things that you value that you still live out today.
Yeah, no, I love that. I appreciate opening up space for that. Like I said, executive communication was a big lesson. Trying to see communication is like trying to get like a precise bullseye instead of like, a ping pong of back and forth. Another one, and we touched on it a little bit before, but just that whole mentality of thinking A to B, not A to Z. So I think a lot of times people think it has to be perfect before they take action, or they know everything. And at least from my experience and the people that I've talked to that I really look up to, a lot of the times it's about, knowing enough to take the first few steps, obviously intentionally, and know where you're going, and to anticipate as much as you can, but riding that line of not feeling like you have to know everything, and just having that faith that you and your team can kind of figure it out in the moment. So Mark had a saying called the Creator's Code, which is like, good is good enough and better than a beautiful idea trapped in your head. Once an idea is alive and good, then you can spend time beautifying it. So one of the things I got from Mark is just always go for like MVP. Like, if you're going to fail fast, right? Because it's like, would you rather spend like 6 months trying to get something perfect and fail after 6 months, or release like an MVP and learn after like a few weeks? So, just releasing things, even if they're imperfect, because nothing ultimately can be perfect, and the only way you can move towards perfection is just by iterating. So releasing things, and I think just community. Mark was such a big community guy. He was really good at creating community in his personal life, always having friends, family over, just creating such a happy and growth environment, but also in all of his companies. He was a really big event guy, getting people from outside of their computer screens together, because I think he just knew that entrepreneurship can sometimes be a lonely sport, and I think too many, especially for me, like it's easy to sometimes get into like a lone wolf mentality. And Mark was really good at creating community, both digitally and in person, and just emphasizing the importance of that, and that ultimately you're the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with. That cliche saying, but it's so true. And I think especially like if you don't come from a family or a background where you know a lot of entrepreneurs, like more than likely when you're starting out, some of your close friends and family, they can't relate to you. And sometimes, at least from my experience, that can kind of be a little isolating. It wasn't until like I started to really put myself out there and like meet Mark and surround myself with other people that I saw also just like how it rises you,
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's not an accident that, in that phase where you were being mentored by Mark, that community was a something that you saw that was valuable, then you go on to create a business
Yep.
with clients and,
Yep.
and community. So tell us a little bit about that genesis. You, Chris, Landon, the three of you, was that your first business partnership? I've had business partnerships in the past that didn't go well. Partnerships are tough. So tell me a little bit about how you came together, and whether or not like you had some bad experiences with partnerships as well, because that's also one of the biggest questions that I get when I'm having conversations with entrepreneurs, when I tell them about my business partner, Jeremy Abraham, and then Jonathan Gray on the personal brand agency side, is how did you meet your business partner? People are kind of baffled because it is challenging. Like it's not an easy thing to find someone that aligned with your values and your vision and
100%.
and is going to go after that without greed and ego and go all wonky. So again, just let's unpack that a little bit. That transition from Mark Hoverson, the mentorship, realizing that he was really good at crafting community and bringing people together with the events and the impact that had on your life, and you could see it having on others, and how that translated and transferred into you taking action to create more of that in the world.
Yeah, 100%. So I met my now business partners, Chris Stapleton, Len Stewart, through Mark. So Chris Stapleton, Len Stewart were also based out of Arizona. And Mark had a really vibrant community and network of entrepreneurs out here in Arizona. He would host a lot of events especially for like young entrepreneurs. He really believed in that and empowering like the next generation. So he had this kind of program called Limitless, where he was mentoring young entrepreneurs, and that's kind of where I first met Chris Stapleton, Len Stewart, and then they actually ended up weaving a little bit deeper even into Mark's business. So it was kind of through Mark that I got to know Chris and Landon. And just to wrap up on the whole Mark conversation, unfortunately, like 6 months after kind of initially getting to know Mark, he pulled me aside and he told, it was actually both myself and Chris and Landon at the time, that he got diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer called neuroendocrine pancreatic cancer. I believe it's the same kind of cancer that Steve Jobs has, which is just a very aggressive form of cancer that unfortunately there's not a very high survival rate. I remember at the time he was like, I think I have a few months to live, and that's what the doctors were telling him anyways. And Mark being Mark ended up going on to live like another 3 years.
Wow.
He unfortunately passed away in 2018. Surrounded by friends, family.
Let's dive into that moment really quick.
Yeah.
Like I said just a few moments ago, having someone that had such a profound impact on your life, like how did that feel like in that moment? I mean, him breaking the news to you, right? And then thinking that he only has a couple months, but him being a fighter and a warrior and having longer than the doctors were telling him that he had. And that's like some pretty potent several years there. Like what was that like, watching someone that you looked up to? And in my mind, someone that you thought was, invincible or strong, right. and realizing that, just tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it was hard, man. I never before Mark, I never really like lost somebody like that. And like Mark was a mentor to me, but he was also like a really good friend to me. In some ways, he was almost like a father figure to me. So the news was shock, and it was a little strange because while like he said that at the time, like he seemed perfectly healthy, and especially I'm really really grateful to God that he really didn't show signs of even having cancer really until right at the end. It was unfortunately just in 2018 is when he really started to kind of notice, and it was a pretty quick decline. But yeah, it was difficult, man. I think like it's some of the hardest things in life, when you see somebody going through cancer. It's a terrible disease. But Mark handled it with so much grace, and he was hosting live streams and sending emails, man, literally until almost the day he died. He hosted a live stream literally 3 days before the day that he died, because he was just so passionate about what he was doing. And to me, that was just really inspiring, and it really pushed me to want to live a life to where you're just giving it all you got every day, no matter the circumstances. And he had the hardest of circumstances, but he always found a reason to to smile and keep going. And I think I'm not alone in saying that, like that. It really profoundly impacted me and my business partners and so many other people seeing that. But it was really difficult to see and to go through, of course. And, I don't know if it's hard, man. I mean, have you gone through anything like that?
There's a research firm that has spent 150,000 hours looking at e-commerce conversion data. They've studied what makes someone buy and what loses the sale at checkout. We took that data and more and built Spiffy Checkouts. If you're an author, speaker, coach, or thought leader, we guarantee will increase your conversions. Don't just take my word for it though. Put it to the test for yourself at spiffycheckouts.com. Okay, back to the show.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't planning on taking the conversation this direction, but one of my early business partners, the partnership didn't work out. There was a lot of really tough conversation I had to have. We ended up parting ways, and we were good friends. And unfortunately, the business falling apart. Partnership falling apart impacted our friendship, not to an irreconcilable place, but in a place where it caused a little bit of distance and friction. And within a year of us going different ways in business, he ended up passing away in a freak accident while he was abroad. And like having someone quite close to you, and in that instance, someone that I had distanced myself from was something that was a lot of emotion to unpack and a lot of things. So I've definitely had quite a bit of loss close to me, and it's never easy.
I think it's I mean, it's a wake up call whenever I think something like that happens as well. I know it was for me, just that life is finite. Like Mark was young. I think he was like 35 years old or so when he initially got diagnosed. So it also really just opened my eyes how precious life is and how it's easy to take things for granted. And kind of really lit a fire to get on the things that
absolutely
that I wanted. And we talked about, I know the second part to this is kind of talking about business partnerships. And for me, I mean, thankfully, I haven't had a ton of bad experiences with business partners. I feel very fortunate to have. I think one of the things that helped, and the reason why Chris Land and I's business partnership is strong, is because like we first kind of started out as like friends. We grew together, kind of like played together, really got to know each other like outside of business. We had opportunities to kind of work on smaller projects together. Like we kind of got experience working together kind of like through Mark. And I think it was just one of those things where, I think a business partnership in a lot of ways is almost like it's like a marriage in a lot of ways, right?
100% is. Yep.
So and like you don't go into a marriage, proposing on the second date, right?
I'm doing some vetting. Yeah. Jeremy, my business partner, always teases my wife, says I married him first, in business, obviously. But I mean, it truly is like you need to have aligned values. I mean, and a lot of people don't approach it that way, and so. I mean, it's a contract. Like you're putting your name on a piece of paper with someone else, going after a mission and a purpose, and it's not a frivolous commitment. 100%.
One of the last nuggets, and we'll talk about CNC that Mark told me about partnerships that he really implemented was like you'll learn more about somebody in an hour of play than weeks of getting to know them. So like playing sports or whatever it is, because like when you're doing something like that, you get to see how somebody handles loss. You get to see, are they willing to put themselves, maybe they haven't played basketball before, or are they willing to put themselves in a beginner position and be uncomfortable? So I think like if you're considering getting into business with somebody, try to play with them, do something new with them, even something where you're both outside your comfort zone, and find ways, that you can work on smaller projects and eventually, before deciding you're going to go fully into business with them. But
100%. And it's also not to be discounted the filtering mechanism of where you met your business partners, right?
Yep.
And especially sounding like Mark, out of all the people that he was working with, it sounds like he saw something in you, he saw something in Landon, he saw something in Chris. And so, that's a very powerful filtering mechanism. And it's one thing that a lot of people don't, that I believe they underestimate, is they wait for find the business partner before they take action. They wait for find the business partner before they feel like they are good enough. And so, taking that action, putting yourself in rooms of people that share your values, in rooms of people who love and geek out over internet marketing. That's right. Everyone has their own flavor and their own strength. And I want to unpack that a little bit here too, of how the three of you come together. There's probably a little bit of overlap with your marketing minds, but then, like where does those three strengths come into play? And then how did we, what is the story of meeting, working on those small projects with Mark, having the clients and community idea, building an 8-figure business in a short period of time. And then I want to unpack some of the things and really ask the question, all right, what is the number one thing that no one wants to talk about building an 8-figure business, and kind of the dark side of that as well, because everyone talks about the 8-figure business and the glitz, the glamour, the revenue, you guys running ads everywhere. You were everyone knew who you guys were, and I also know that there's a reality that no one wants to talk about. So there's always a trade-off that happens, and so we'll dive into that a little bit too. But let's first just start the conversation off at you, Chris, Landon, working on some projects with Mark. How did the idea of clients and community even come about? And then what was the first steps of taking action on that? And let's unpack that story.
Yeah, let's do it. So after kind of Mark passed away, Chris, Landon, and I, in some ways, went a little bit of our different directions. We ended up kind of just doing some consulting work. We ended up consulting, again, just kind of a strange parallel, but also not strange. I believe everything happens for a reason. We ended up consulting on one of the same companies together. So once again, we were kind of like working together in some capacity. And then it was about, almost a year after Mark passed that we all hopped on a 3-way call, and we're like, we have that entrepreneurial itch again to like build something. And, we worked so good together with Mark, our cross paths again, consulting. Like, it would be so cool to, build something together where we can like really teach other entrepreneurs a lot of the lessons and principles of business and mindset that we got through working with Mark, and kind of carry on his legacy, but in our own way. And so at the time, we decided to launch a company called Social Media Entrepreneurs, where we launched. It was a community and a course, and we were teaching.
And about what year is this, really quick?
Thank you for that. This would be about 2019.
Cool.
2019, we launched Social Media Entrepreneurs, and we were teaching just Facebook marketing, Instagram marketing, and some Facebook group stuff. And we started to notice really quickly that our customers and clients were getting great results with Facebook groups. And around that time, 2019, 2020, that's also when Facebook really started to pretty heavily push communities. And I think they realized, like, for them, that was kind of a mode. That's something that users were really gravitating towards, was community. And like I kind of mentioned before, Mark was a big culture and community guy, both offline and online. He always had Facebook groups for all of his offers, brought people back together. He was really good at rallying the community, doing fun things in the community, contests like live streams, and then translating that both in person and again bringing it back offline. So we were like, we feel like there's really something here where there's a lot of coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs that have, email lists and these assets that are very almost like one directional. And we started to see the power of when you can bolt on a Facebook group and a community to what you're doing, that can really give you like a competitive advantage, because it allows people to have a little bit more of a two-way conversation. You also get to tap into the fact that you're letting people connect with each other. And even if like you don't people equate that, like, it's a valuable thing being able to even just connect people, because they equate that to you. Like they met a friend or a business partner or JV through your community. And at the time, 2019, 2020, not a ton of people were doing Facebook groups and in community. So we really decided to pivot that business towards the end of 2019, both out of our own volition, and we also were a part of a lot of masterminds. One in particular was Traffic and Funnels back in the day from like Taylor Welch and Chris Ovens, and we were pretty big into their world, attending their events, and they kind of inspired us with a little bit more of like the high ticket business model, and they give us opportunities to also kind of speak on their stages and kind of get to network with people. And then again, the more that we talk to other entrepreneurs, even in like their world, like a lot of people weren't doing communities, and they didn't really realize the power of bolting a community on to everything that they were doing. So towards the end of 2019, we kind of rebranded into clients and community. We decided that we'd go all in on creating and systematizing a structure to where we'd help entrepreneurs identify the type of community to launch that'd be valuable for their audience, how to launch it, giving them scripts and frameworks, then giving them frameworks on how to grow it and how to convert those group members into clients. And again, it worked really well. And a big part of our growth was just word of mouth, because we were able to get people really great results through our program and through our frameworks of groups, and also paid advertising. At the same time, we decided to go all in on paid ads, and that also worked really well. We immersed ourselves in the paid ad world, which is, a whole other conversation and path that,
Yeah,
that we
we
could
do a
go
whole
down
podcast
on the whole
just unpacking that. Yeah.
on that. Obviously, it's one thing. Oh yeah, we went into paid ads. That's a much deeper conversation. But went into paid ads, had the right people to talk to that we learned from, and
I think the most important piece on that too is you also had, at this point, my understanding, probably about a decade of experience in learning direct response marketing, understanding what a funnel is, understanding the sales cycle, being confident that you can get a client. There's a lot that goes into paid ads, and in my opinion, while people have success in paid ads, if you're just getting started, having the preconceived notion that ads is going to just all of a sudden make it rain for you is a misconception. Ads is an amplification of what works. You already kind of knew what worked. You saw the need in the marketplace. You had conversations. Things were going word of mouth, and then you use paid ads to amplify what you knew already worked. And that's really, to oversimplify the ads game, it's not that Facebook ads work or don't work. It's, do you have a business and a system? Do you have a message that works? And then ads just amplify that. So I just kind of want to anchor down what could be a whole hour-long conversation just on ads, like at its core. That's what ads are. There's so many people out there that say Facebook ads don't work, or Facebook ads are the holy grail, and it's not. The ads aren't the thing. It's the copy, it's the messaging, it's the offer, and ads are just the amplification of that.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's so true. Yeah, before we spent the first year and a half or so really dialing in our messaging, dialing in our offer, dialing in our fulfillment, getting our clients results before we even decide to look at doing a paid ad, and then it can kind of be pouring gasoline on the fire, and it can grow really quickly.
And in my opinion, if you're trying to grow something fast, that is the recipe right there. Is build something that works and then pour gasoline on the fire. And in my opinion, if you just continued down the path of word of mouth and getting people results, you wouldn't have built an 8-figure business in the amount of time that you did. So ads were a critical component of that, of building the mechanism, the revenue generating mechanism, and then having the skill set of knowing when was the right time to pour the gasoline on the fire by pulling that ads lever. So again, it's not to discount any of it, but there was a very, very strategic order of how you did that in order to accomplish what you did, and it's deeply inspiring. So
because we have friends that have done the opposite way, where they have something that moderately works, but there's still fulfillment issues, and then they scale the ads, and the ads end up scaling the problems in the back end. So you gotta be careful that way. But so it just I attribute the growth to one, what we were selling was truly helping people and working. And two, going back to kind of the business partnership conversation, there's pros and cons with everything in life. Of course, business partnerships, you're giving up a piece of the pie, so to speak. But I also think it can help you go further, and I think there is something special to build with other people, because entrepreneurship can sometimes be lonely. And when you're building with partners, you're kind of going through it together. So you always have somebody that's going through something similar that you're going through, and you have 3 people that are just they're the right partners that are bought in, probably a lot more than most employees would be. So you talked about kind of skill set overlaps. All of us have some skills in marketing, sales, ops and stuff like that. I think myself, what I'm trying to say is our skill sets complement each other. So in that business, I ended up taking a little bit, while I contributed to the marketing, I took a little bit more of the operations, systems, kind of fulfillment role So I was very strong in that pillar of the business. And then Chris and Landon were very heavy, more like the marketing and sales arms. So I think another thing that contributed to clients and communities growth is we had basically like a founder mentality in each of those three divisions, and we were able to stay kind of in our creative geniuses while we were scaling the business, and that allowed us to keep up with like the hockey stick like growth that we saw with clients and community.
That's incredible. That's awesome. Yeah. So important to have slightly overlapping but complementary skill sets, and to have a founder on the fulfillment side of the business, I think is critically important, to have that ownership mentality in getting clients results. The people can have momentary success hitting high 7 figures, even low 8 figures, but you can't sustain it unless you're actually getting people results. So let's ground this conversation in the 6-fig concept. So you have this idea of clients and communities. How long did it take you from going from idea to your first 6 figures in a year? Like, how quickly did you accomplish that milestone? Now understanding that there's a lot of backstory and lessons and mentorship and all of these things that led to really explosive success in a short period of time. But so now we're in clients and communities. You got started. What was that time frame between the idea, you, Chris, Landon coming together, hey, let's do this thing together, and your first 6 figures in a year?
Yeah. So we did first 6 figures our first year in 2019. That was still kind of really, though, like a building year, really trying to figure out our messaging, our offer, dialing that in, our fulfillment, everything like that. Then in 2020, we had our first 6-figure month. And then things grew really quickly after that. We had our first $1 million month it was October 2021. So about a year later, where we did, multiple 6 figures from stage launching a mastermind. Which was a pretty surreal feeling.
So that was one presumably 90-minute talk, 60-minute talk, making an offer and having multiple 7 figures come from that one 90-minute talk.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, we have multiple 7-figure offers coming from that. That's when we launched our year mastermind. That was Scale Mastermind, where we were hosting events every 90 days, and it was a really awesome mastermind where we focused with entrepreneurs a little bit more on the back end of scaling. So like our front end program, we taught people the client acquisition strategy to bolt on a Facebook group as either the main client acquisition strategy or a bolt on to what they were already doing. And then we had our mastermind that we launched October of 2021, which was all around things like hiring, firing systems, processes, operations, leadership, and everything like that. But it's like it really is like the bamboo. Like bamboo it's like bamboo is like underground. Don't quote me exactly, but for like months to years.
Yeah, it's like 4 years or something.
Yeah. For like years, right? And then all of a sudden, like it just like over, like literally within days and weeks, it grows to be this super huge structure that you can kind of see, and that like the reason we were able to see that growth with clients and community was really because of the decade work beforehand. It was like cutting the teeth on the odd jailbreak. It was the mentorship with Mark in the trenches. We were spending that first year or so dialing in our offer and figuring out how we could really provide the most value and get our clients the best results, to then start to see like the hockey stick like growth curve, where we had our first year where we had like just over 6 figures in a year. Then like the second year we have like a 6-figure month, and then and then you fast forward almost a year later, and then we have our like almost like first 6-figure multiple multi 6-figure hour. I think that is kind of the cool thing about it, is like once you start to build momentum, I think it starts to build very quickly. I think it's like getting to that point of just like building the momentum is always, of course, the hardest part.
100%. One of my favorite Tony Robbins quotes is, everyone overestimates what they can accomplish in a year and underestimates what they can accomplish in a decade.
Yeah.
And even with your approach to clients and community, like, you weren't trying to scale at all costs. It's not like you were turning on ads at month 12. you said you made your first 6 figures in the first year. You're dialing in operations, you're dialing in the offer, making sure you're getting clients results. And then the following year, you laid that solid foundation in those first 12 months that allowed you to accelerate things and making about the same amount of revenue over 12 months in 1 month.
Yeah.
And then when that's possible, when you make 12 months of revenue in 1 month, that's when you have extra resources to start turning on ads and start to experiment and build a team. So, and then to go from your first 6-figure month in 2020 to your first 7-figure month in 2021, that's some rapid growth. So again, you're hiring, you're growing, you're serving clients. Like, tell us what that's all about. How big did you grow your team to? And what were some learning lessons along the way there?
Yeah, it was definitely a whirlwind. I think we did a lot of things right, and we also did a lot of things wrong. With that, I think because we went from a place where it was almost like Chris, Landon, and I, and like a VA, to like, at its peak, we had like a team of almost 30 people. We had like 8 or 9 people on our sales team, like 10 client success coaches, like 4 to 5 like VAs that would hang out in client success, operations assistant. So at its peak, it grew into a really big company. And Chris, Landon, and I got some experience with that, with working with Mark. Like, Mark had a really lean team around him, like a few people, but not to the scale that CNC was. And we made we did a lot of things right, a lot of things wrong. We get back. I think I can share maybe like three lessons.
Three lessons of things that that you implemented that were meaningful in the results you got. And let's talk about 3 things that you tried and didn't work, according to plan, or maybe it was hiring someone that was super talented, but they weren't a culture fit. Like what were some of the things that going into it, you might not have even been aware that you needed to know? So 3 things that were wins and things that are meaningful to the growth trajectory, and then 3 things that aren't so fun to talk about.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, since we talked about building a team, I'll talk about some of the lessons with building a team. I think at first, like, we were growing so quickly, we didn't know too much about hiring. So one of the things we made the mistake of early on is, even if we didn't necessarily feel like we had the perfect or the right candidate, we would kind of like hire them anyways. So we would maybe like put out like a quick job posting, interview maybe 5 to 10 people, and then just like choose one, even if they weren't really the best candidate. And I think one of the lessons we learned there is it's like, it's best not to hire at all unless you find like truly the person that in your gut you feel like is going to do a good job, because hiring the wrong team member just has so many like second order consequences, in the sense of it can impact your company culture. It cascades into so many things. So one of the big lessons that we had to learn is like, hire slow and also fire fast. If it's the wrong fit. So we went from, when we were initially building to, very small pool to, in the end, when I was looking for like almost like a high level like operations assistant, like director of operations, like we got to the point where, we would accept like 100 to 150 applications. We'd have a whole hiring funnel for that would whittle down to like the top like 20, doing interviews with like the top 20, second interviews with like the top 10. And like in the end, we ended up building this whole like hiring funnel to try to find the right person. But we went from like, obviously sometimes you need to hire somebody, you got to hire them fast, but not settling really in the hiring process.
Yeah. You said something very subtly there, but a hiring funnel. Like most people, the only thing you think of when you hear funnel in business is marketing funnel, but it's kind of the same approach of marketing to attract the right talent, and having a funnel that has the best talent come out the bottom. You want the best customers and you want the best talent, right? And so like a lot of the psychology is the same there. So
seeing the job posting as the ad, and then again it's the whole thing. There's the whole opt-in funnel, the type, like the type form. There's a ton of things we learned kind of through that. But
I mean, so again, you had never built a sizable business like that before. Really never managed teams of that size. Like there had to have been some big learning lessons and like shifts in psychology, shifts in mindset, shifts in mentality to go from you, Chris, and Landon being like the three musketeers and like doing this thing on your own to like getting out of your own way. This is like with our personalbrand.com clients, usually the biggest gear that we're helping them shift is going from the mindset that it took for them to get their initial success to reach 7 figures. But you can hustle, grit, and grind your way to 6 figures and 7 figures. You can't do it to 8. So what was that gear that you shifted either, obviously mentally first that allowed you guys to get out of your own way to ultimately scale? Tell us a little bit about that thinking.
It was like an identity shift, man. Like, building it, I was kind of like, I think like my partners agree, like we were always the ones that would be doing the thing, doing the work, and we would have our hands very, very closely in it. And we started to realize like when you're building a team, to keep that identity where you have to be the one to constantly do things is like counterproductive to building a great team, because what happens is it really disempowers the people on your team, and it creates a situation where you're almost trapped because they can't problem solve themselves. They're always coming to you for answers. So at first, one of the mistakes we made is we were building this team, but we were still kind of having the same identity that we were still having to do it all. And they were there maybe to like handle some of the side stuff. But what ended up happening is like we still realized that we had this team. We're like, we don't feel like we're reaping the benefits of having a team. Like we're still the ones doing things really. And if anything, it's harder because now we're doing things, but we're also having to tell other people like to do this, to do that. So eventually we had to, get to the point where it was like, okay, like in order to get to the next level, we have to be willing to let go of control and almost like accept that like 80% with somebody else doing it is like actually the biggest win if it means that we can step back to focus on the more important things in the business, which is like developing leaders, making sure like we're on the right track with where we're going as a business, focusing on some of the bigger leverage pieces. So one of the hardest things, I'll just talk from my perspective, was almost like letting go of that control and almost having to find a new identity, and then being that person that's more like empowering and training and teaching other people on the team. And even if that meant like kind of taking a step back, that long-term would allow us to take like 3 giant steps forward. But that was like a whole identity thing to wrestle with, because at first I always saw myself as, I'll just do it. I'll just get in there. Like I'm the guy that always has solutions and the answers.
Yeah, I can do it faster. Let me do it. Let me get in there. Yeah, totally. I can relate.
Yeah, and when I had to letting that go was interesting, because then it's like, okay, well, where is my value then? If it's not like with me doing things, like kind of where is that lie in you? And that's like something to kind of wrestle with. But
yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things I had to overcome too was that misconception that being successful was difficult. Mm-hmm. That in order to achieve something, you had to work really, really hard. You had to be stressed out. You had, it was tough. And a lot of that I had to unpack too, of just like, okay, if I'm not working 14-hour days, Gary Vee says I'm a punk, and again, there's a season where you have to do that. And you did that consistently at each chapter of your life. Me too. There's a season where, you're putting in extremely long hours. You're condensing timelines. But that can't be the baseline of how you operate. In the beginning, especially with higher ticket stuff, you get paid because you can do complex things.
Right.
But then that complexity needs to be something that you are experimenting with, simplifying and distilling things down into their most simple form, and then scaling really what you do in its most simple form. I mean, again, the amazing thing about your story is that Facebook groups existed for years before you built clients and community. At its face, it's such a simple concept. Hey, I don't have to build Facebook. I'm not a technology company.
That's right.
I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm not taking on VC funding. I'm just, again, jumping in the flow of something where people already want to figure something out, and I'm building a massive business off of giving people just what they want, doing something that seemingly anyone could have done. Right. And so like in my mind, one of the things I want to highlight on this show is just oftentimes success isn't about being the next Mark Zuckerberg, but it's just taking action on something that seems so simple and so obvious that anyone could do it, but most people don't. And so, you saw the opportunity, you took action, you figured things out with complexity at the beginning, you simplified it and scaled it, you got out of your own way. And so, you shifted those gears extremely fast. I mean, and that's something that I'm actually extremely, I have so much respect for you for how fast you did that, because most people, it takes them decades to figure that out. So, yeah, do you have any other kind of tips? I know we kind of hit a couple of the things that we learned, and then I definitely also want to really anchor in and ask the question about, what is the one thing people don't want to talk about building an 8-figure business? And so let's unpack a couple other maybe tough lessons along the way, and then maybe talk about potentially the impact on you, your personal life, maybe your mental health, your physical health. Everything's a trade-off in life. And when you're running and you're sprinting and you're building a business and everything's working and you're pouring gas on the fire, there's usually some sort of trade-off. So we'll unpack some of that too.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think, another thing that we just had to really learn a little bit on the fly and quickly realized was really important, which sounds obvious in hindsight, but it just wasn't something that we necessarily, it's not as important in the initial stages, but it's just like numbers in the data game. Especially when you're doing big revenue numbers and when you're spending a lot of money on ads. At its peak, we were spending like $4,000 or $5,000 a day on like Facebook ads, but it's just like,
so that's $60,000 a month. Plus you got team expenses and all these different things, right?
Right.
It's $600,000 a month. Yeah. So never do math in front of a live audience. $5,000 a day is $600,000.
Yeah. I think at its peak we were doing. I think the most we ever spent ads in a month was like 150, maybe close to like 200.
Okay.
But yeah, our average was probably about 100 to like 150K a month on ads. But yeah, just really learning about the data side of things, and like both from a perspective of like, there's so many different areas to look at. There's both a data perspective of like your team, and like one of the things that you talked about is like, I think another reason we were able to scale really quickly is because we had more than just like an idea. We were able to like productize our methodology into like a blueprint, right? So it was like scalable and it could deploy, which also allowed us to then step back and actually train other people to learn like our methodology and our process and help other people implement that. But then like, so you're managing like coaches, and there's a whole realm of like, okay, still making sure like you're collecting the right data to make sure your clients are happy. There's the data on the marketing side to make sure you're profitable with the ad spend, and then we had like a sales team as well. So one of the big, there's a ton of lessons there. Like one, just the importance of data and looking at data over like not only what's happening, like this week, but like what's the trends over like a rolling 30 days or rolling 7 days, and like making sure you're looking at the right windows. But another thing that we learned really quickly is the difference between like, and this is just kind of a quick spitfire lesson, but lagging and leading indicators. At first we were always just concerned about like, okay, like where's our revenue at? Like where's our cash at? And like that was kind of what we were kind of like focused on. But we realized really quickly that revenue, like things like revenue and like cash flow, isn't actually like a leading indicator. That's actually it's called a lagging indicator, because it's lagging behind the things that actually like drive the revenue. So at first we were paying attention to like the wrong things, the wrong data inside of our business, and that really quickly led us to starting to pull back the curtain and be like, okay, like what's really important here? It's not just even like things like cost per lead, but like lead quality, right? So it's like even like leading, lagging indicators with that. It's not just the amount of leads and the number of leads. That's kind of leading indicator. It's like the lagging indicator is like, okay, what's the actual like lead quality? So really recognizing there's leading and lagging indicators and figuring out what that is for your business and the right kind of things to look at. That was like a whole skill set that I feel like we almost had to develop a little bit like on the fly through trial and error, but became just so important to the continued growth, just to make sure that we weren't losing money. Because once you start tacking on, when things are lean, there's a lot of profit, and as you scale, you want to maximize profit. But when you start layering on payroll and advertising, like it becomes even more important to be following the numbers. So leading and lagging indicators and creating like having like a data dashboard, which I ended up developing just like in Excel that I had VAs update from spreadsheets. But like that was just super key. And one of the things that we just had to do to kind of like level up as like almost entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I would just like kind of like whatever the next challenge was in the business. We talked about curiosity before. I just chose to get really curious about for a month or so and just like learn that. And then it was like on to the next thing. So we did that like with like the team at first. Like I said, I struggled with that like identity shift of having to be a doer, and then some more so taking on the identity. Okay, no, that I need the way to get to the next level is I need to actually be a leader, like empower people. One of the next dominoes was like the data game, and we kind of just like in the air we're building this airplane, but with speed and intentionality.
Yeah, it's so critical to you have to have your fingers on the pulse of the numbers. It's one of the biggest lessons that I learned from my time with Brendan Burchard. I was a CMO between 2015 to 2017 and got a deep dive lesson into data analytics. The tool Wicked Reports had just come out, and you could track ad spend attribution over 30, 60, 90, 120, whatever time frame. And it was shocking to see how some of our best leads actually turned profitable and generate the most revenue for the business after 90 days, where most people, they turn on their ads for 30 days and all of a sudden nothing works, and they just shut them off. And so like, you have to have your fingers on the pulse of your numbers. You need to know how much it costs to acquire a customer, and you need to know your customer lifetime value so that you know whether you're underwater or you're actually making revenue. And that was one of the brilliant things about Brendan, was that he had an entire offer chain that I helped him up level and rebuild in Infusionsoft. He had 12 months of offers. So basically, it was what Brendan taught at Experts Academy was his OVO, offer value offer. OVO, opt-in value offer.
Nice.
And so he would just do that over and over and over again, just value offer, value offer. And he had that sequence for 12 months. And so he was able to lean into his ad spend because he knew his customer lifetime value. And after 90 days, he broke even. And so obviously over the next 8 months, like if you're breaking even at 3 months, of course you're going to generate more profit by adding more value to people over the remaining 8 months. And we had the data to prove it. So even though he was in the info, author, speaker, coach business, we were almost able to lean into it almost like a SaaS product, where we could lose money short term to make money long term, and we could just outspend the competition. So just kind of want to really highlight that again, you having that curiosity was a superpower, and understanding the data, obviously from some mentorship and some of the circles that you were running in helped expedite that too. But that really was the key to your growth. Was you're from the outside looking in, a lot of people was like, oh, look at these young kids just teaching that Facebook stuff.
Yeah, right.
I can relate because that was me too.
Right.
But you guys were extremely strategic about how you were executing. You were focused on product fulfillment. You were focused on service. You were focused on bringing people together and adding value. And there's so many lessons to learn from that.
Yeah, just every. Yeah, I mean, that's what people don't see. Is it's like it's kind of cliche, but it's like an iceberg, right? You see the tip of the iceberg, which is like all the Facebook group stuff. But yeah, just like you said, like everything underneath, which is like the data, which is the way like we create these custom like fulfillment systems. So when like a client entered our system, like they entered like a CRM where they would be moved week to week, and they would have tasks assigned to the coach that they were assigned to. So like everything was it was very methodical and systematized, but behind the scenes, because it can get very, it is just very, very chaotic when you're operating a company like that. And very quickly we realized that like anything that isn't very clearly defined and it's not process orientated just breaks down, creates so much chaos. So that was big. We talked about the mindset. I mean, mindset was really big. I mean, while it was very exciting to scale a business that quickly, it was also some of like the highest stress. And there were moments where like we felt the pressure.
What is the dark side of an 8-figure business that no one wants to talk about?
Yeah, I mean the dark side, I think, of an 8-figure business, especially when you haven't done it before, is you're just constantly solving challenges, and there's constantly new challenges coming up, and there's a prize and a payoff for solving them, but there's a lot of friction, and really quickly, I think you either start to learn how strong you are, or that weight or that pressure kind of crushes you. And I think the biggest thing that we did right is we didn't keep that bottled up, and we hired sort of like a coach, a therapist, if you will. And while we were scaling our business, we were working with, her name's Carlo Royale. So shout out to Carlo Royale. She had helped a mentor of ours, and he was like, you guys got to work with her. But simultaneously, while we were scaling this business, we were also doing some like really deep inner work with like her, because it's funny, like just all these things start to come up while you're under this pressure. And it's like things like big or small that happen like in your childhood, and like it was if we weren't willing to go to like greater levels of depth within ourselves and be honest with how we were feeling and just like feel how we were feeling, I also don't know if we could have made that work, because there is a lot of pressure. You have like, you start to, like I was saying, like you start to have very big overheads, a lot of people relying on you. And if
you're starting your expenses
right.
or what you made in your first 2 or 3 years in your first job as a kid, right? You're like, oh, like this is my monthly expenses, and this is my payroll, and all these people I'm responsible for feeding.
We were so excited for our first six figure a month, and then it got to the point where it's like, if we don't bring in 6 figures this week, like we're screwed. Like it's to the point where it's like, the scale kind of changes. So it can be a lot of pressure, but I think it's just your relationship with that pressure, and whether you see that as an opportunity to become stronger and just learn the right tools and techniques to help you deal with that pressure. I think that's the thing with anything. If you're up against a challenge or a setback or a roadblock, I always just like to remind myself, like, I'm just like a tool away or a mindset tweak away from like solving it. There's like just something that's not on my belt right now that would really help me in this moment that I don't have just yet. And we've always been really big in just being in masterminds, having mentors, having personal coaches. And if we didn't make that, investment into ourselves, I don't think we would have been able to scale clients community to what it was. And also just, you got to take care of yourself in the process too, man. Like it's also really easy when things are going great to like not sleep properly, to like not eat properly. But even sometimes like that, sometimes you gotta, like, there was a moment where we all collectively had to also just make sure we were taking care of ourselves,
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that. I can echo exactly what you just described too. It took me a long time to figure this out, especially when the work we do with personal brands. You're working the same, kind of client profile of authors, speakers, people building communities. It's a deeply transformational experience to us in our agency. It's like we dial in the brand, the marketing, the messaging, the business model, but you can spend all the time, energy, and effort getting the right message, running the ads, building the offers, having the business model on the back end. But if you're not ready for that next level of leadership, wealth, abundance, being seen, being heard, ultimately you'll hesitate, delay, self-sabotage. And so that third piece that you were just speaking to, where you guys leaned into that growth, you saw, that potentially at certain stages that you're over your skis. We all are during those phases of growth. But really like having that wisdom and that awareness to call and help, it is something that, especially as men in society, we think that reaching out for help is a weakness, but ultimately like that turned into a massive strength and superpower, and allowed you to kind of transcend some of the limitations that you had, right?
I think anything you keep bottled up inside, like it can start to like fester, right? And it's like, even as simple as it was like having Carla, where there was a good like 6 months where Chris and I were meeting with her every week, and even just like admitting like, I'm just feeling like overwhelmed, I'm feeling like stressed out today, and even just like admitting that, it's just so freeing. I think I look back to times when I've gone in my own way, and I think a lot of times it's just because I've kept that balled in. So I think they're just like you said. I mean, sometimes it can be difficult to ask for. I don't even like to use the word help. Just assistance. Like we all need assistance.
It's not even. I was just saying, hey, like I don't know, right? Just admitting that, and like you said, just like verbally speaking it out, like not bottling up, like moving the energy out of your body. Because
then you can get back to just being like authentic. I think again, if you hold things in, you're also being, in a way, you're being fake, because you're not being honest with yourself of how you're feeling. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm feeling stressed out. Well, what do I do when I feel stressed out? It means I either need to just like maybe do a brain dump, maybe go for a run. But like, that's the whole thing with like with stress and anything is it's like I think I realized just like admitting it and just speaking out loud then lets you kind of move past it.
Yeah, for sure. Before we wrap things up, I definitely want to dive into what you're up to these days. Usually at the end of the podcast, I ask, all right, like you're having all the success.
Yeah.
One of the biggest mistakes that we see people make is we've codified building an online business. I mean, really building any business, but us in the personal brand space into 4 distinct stages, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And ultimately where a lot of the friction and pain and frustration comes from is implementing stage 4 strategies when you're at stage 1, 2, and 3. And so for me, in my personal story, going from implementing stage 4 strategies for all of my clients, being praised for it, being best at it, like those are the dials I know how to pull. It took me a long time to, there was a lot of things I had to overcome thinking that I needed to start at stage 4. And that's really how that became about. Like, there's different stages. I need to humble myself and go back to stage 1. And so as of recently, you've launched a new project, in the micro bakery space. I'll let you tell a little bit more about it, but going from running an 8-figure business to starting a new project, like what were 3 things that you knew that you needed to do in order to have success with that out of the gates?
Yeah. So in 2024, my partners and I, we made the decision to transition the business model of clients and community a little bit. For the last like 4 or 5 years, we were hosting events like every 90 days, 6 months, and we had this really large team. In amongst that as well, we also launched a couple like SaaS softwares through clients and community that helped with like group management that were doing really well. And we're like, and one of the other things we ran into with clients and community is we felt like we hit this kind of like growth ceiling, because one of the things that we weren't very cognizant of with building clients and community in the beginning stages is like TAM, like total addressable market size. Clients and community was this amazing business, but our client was kind of this like Venn diagram where it was like a coach, consultant, or like online entrepreneur that was doing Facebook marketing, that was also okay with like building a Facebook community, because there's a certain thing about building a community. You have to be willing to put yourself out there more, put yourself in front of people, and we kind of like hit this growth ceiling. So we decided to in 2024 wind down the coaching side, keep the SaaS software side going, which was very lean and high profit, and in some ways kind of take our time a little bit, move with speed, but take our time in figuring out what we wanted the next play to be that had a little bit more enterprise value, because that was the other thing about clients and community that we didn't necessarily think about in the beginning, is it was a brand very tied to our faces, which I think there's a power, there's obviously a superpower in that as well. But we looked at kind of where we wanted to be like 5, 10, 20 years down the road. And we were like, we really want to build something that has a lot of like enterprise value. And we just didn't think that clients and community was necessarily the vehicle to get us to that start or to that place.
And to speak about that specifically, like you guys were crushing it, profitable, really healthy business, but because it was so closely tied to your likeness, there was kind of a key man weakness in the business model, and you really wanted to leverage what you already had into creating something that you could ultimately scale and sell for a lot of money. Is that a way of describing it?
100%. Okay, we're like, we have these SaaS softwares that we had quietly grown alongside of the main CNC business that were like at 80-90% profit margins with like a super lean team. We're like, let's kind of just transition to run these softwares and then kind of figure out what that next move will be. And we called it, or kind of coined it now, like what's that slam business? And I think one of the questions that I think we're going to get to is if we were starting over, kind of what would I be thinking about? I'd be thinking about like what's the slam business, and slam's like an acronym that I created, which is like skills, leverage, audience, and market size. And like, how can you get those to kind of converge? And at least if anything, it's like a mental model. And I think if we, because like with clients and community, like I said, one of the things that held us back from growing that was a little bit like the total addressable market. So we wanted something where it would align with our skills, where we would have leverage, so we weren't building something that was necessarily purely tied to our faces. where of course there's an audience that's either already buying or hungry for a solution, and that has the right market size for what we want to do. So we kind of took our time in deciding what that was. At the time, my business partner Landon, his wife, very passionate about baking, and she launched an Instagram page to kind of share her passion with baking for the world, which is called Micro Bakery Girl, and that ended up going really viral, which was so cool to see. And we had a conversation about what it could potentially look like to build something in that industry, in that vertical, which is funny because like we would have never guessed that we'd be building some kind of project in like the food or the baking niche, but
the sourdough girly space.
Yeah, the sourdough girly space, But we realized that like if we apply like slam to it, like it aligned with our skills because it was something we could apply like our skills of marketing to and business to. There was a real leverage. There was a real leverage there because Jess has been able to build this incredible audience. And there's obviously the audience there, and the market size is there. 50% of the U.S. population is into baking. So we're doing some cool things kind of with that brand. We just bought the domain bakingrecipes.com, which we're really excited about, and we're kind of actually about to reinvent the way that like recipes are sold. We're about to release a recipe marketplace with bakingrecipes.com. And it's crazy, man. We live in a crazy age with like vibe coding. Like I mentioned, like we release softwares and clients and community, which like those softwares took like a year sometimes to develop those softwares. And now thanks to like AI vibe coding, like we're still working with a developer because like AI coding is still in its infancy, and you got to make sure security is there. But like we're literally going to be able to develop this marketplace in like a month or two, which is and for like at a fraction of the cost of what we spent to develop some of the softwares in clients and communities. So yeah, we're kind of just focused on the mantra right now is like slow is smooth and smooth is fast. We're trying to make like the right decision. So this is one play that kind of we're excited about, bakingrecipes.com, and what we can do in that space. And also I've been able to just take a step back too and ask myself like, what are some ways that I also kind of want to contribute? So I'm stepping into kind of some of my passions right now. Personal development, we talked about this to begin with. It's been a big passion for like both of ours. While building clients and community, I really started to kind of, as just a side hobby for me, collect like rare first edition personal development books, and I started to like kind of study the origins of personal development in the US. And like, you have like some of the greats like Brendan, like Tony, who did they learn from? Like Napoleon Hill, a lot of people know of, in his book Think and Grow Rich. And I went back in time, like, who did he learn from? And you start to find names like Charles Hannell, who did he learn from? Thomas Troward. And yeah, it's just something I just love studying the mind, studying the subconscious, how our thoughts a lot of ways influence our reality and the way that we show up in the world and how people respond to us. And, for me, I feel like I grew up in a situation where it's like, it wasn't the cards that you were dealt, it's how you played them. And I think it's because of the mindset work that I was able to do, that I was able to kind of like break out of the typical mold for my family and do something a little bit different. I equate that to personal development. So anyways, long story short, I'm also getting into hosting events, and I'm still in the early stages of that, but having a lot of fun, just being a little bit of a beginner again and learning. Like we hosted business events, but kind of getting out there and hosting events just like solo, training on mindset and transformation. I just hosted my own event called the Master Key Experience in July, and I'm going to be doing some more things with that brand, kind of reviving older wisdom in the 1800s and 1900s and modernizing that in a way that's applicable in the here and now to help people level up their communication and mindset.
That's so amazing. Where did the Master Key Experience come from? Where did that concept come from?
Yeah, it really came from like one of throughout this journey of collecting all these books. One of my favorite books was called The Master Key System. It was published by Charles Hannell, and he was actually who Napoleon Hill learned from. Napoleon Hill wrote Charles Hannell a letter. You can Google this online. It's all documented, kind of thanking Hannell for his his works on like the subconscious and the spiritual side of success. But that book is it's a hard book to get through. It's like 500 pages. It's written in like an older English. So I just know like a lot of people wouldn't make the time to kind of go through that in the modern age. But I think that there's a lot of really valuable lessons in that and how deep people thought back then, because there was no devices. Like people literally were just alone with their thoughts. They had to go inward. And I think that's, something that is a little bit missing in certain aspects of like today's life. So my goal was to kind of take like a few of the principles of that book and modernize them into an experience. And that's kind of what I'm still in the process of curating and building. But we hosted the first event. It went really well, had 25, 30 or so people there, and got really great feedback from that. So being able to modernize this kind of like ancient wisdom, I call it, is it's really cool, and I'm excited to continue fleshing that out.
That's so amazing. So there's so much just to unpack there, but I mean, just for a split second of context, how many people would come out to your clients and community events?
Clients and community events, I would say the average would be about anywhere from like 50 to 150 at its peak.
Nice.
Yep.
So for me, like I was running Brendan's events, and there was like, thousands of people and whatnot. But like I always thought that I need to start there. And so I just want to commend you too for like following something that's deeply passionate. And in a lot of ways, people are afraid of taking a step backward, or I'm used to doing these big events and all of a sudden now I'm doing this thing and there's only going to be a handful of people in the room. But like having a heart of service and like passion and bringing these codes that are lost or have been adapted and maybe not in its purest form or still being communicated this time, and going back to the source. I mean, for me, this conversation is so meta right now. Like you and we sit on the shoulders of giants, right? For the people that we learn from and the mentors. And for me, I was always digging into like, all right, like Tony, like who did he learn from? Jim Rohn and Napoleon Hill. I never even had the thought to dig any deeper, And so again, this is where your curiosity is your superpower, and being curious to read Think and Grow Rich and be like, where did he learn from, and where did he learn from? And to really bring some of that ancient wisdom down is really cool. I'm so excited to attend one of your upcoming events. Anyone watching, definitely encourage you to get in the room there. How can people find you, more about you personally, follow your work, and then how can people find out more about the event?
Yeah, I love that, man. I appreciate that. Just I'm on Facebook and Instagram under I am Jaden Easton. And then the website for the events is betterthought.com.
Awesome. Jaden, thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for your transparency, the open conversation, and look forward to having you back in the future.
It's such a pleasure, man. Right. This is such an important mission that you're doing, and I'm happy to play a role in supporting that.
Thanks, man.